my first piece of advice, if someone were to ask me, would definitely be make sure you are ready to commit to your whole life being on the internet, involving the internet.
Welcome to Confessions of a Social Media Manager with me, Erin from Agorapulse. Today I have with me Nicole Phillip. Nicole is a senior social media manager for The Hustle. Now, if you don't know who The Hustle is, well, you should. It's the media company which aims to inspire and inform the next generation of tech entrepreneurs and innovators. And it does that with its newsletter, which has over 1 million subscribers, its premium content, Trends, which offers a wealth of business ideas for paid subscribers, and their podcasts, My First Million and The Daily Show. All of that is happening along with their usual articles and blogs to keep anyone working in digital marketing in the know. It was acquired by HubSpot in February 2021, which was, I think, slightly genius because HubSpot focuses on evergreen educational content. The Hustle is all about up-to-the-minute trends. So together, it's basically a match made in heaven. So they've been acquired by them for over a year now, so it'll be interesting to see how that's been going. The Hustle, though, along with all of that stuff that they do, has social media channels, including Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok. And they boast a combined follower rate of over like 1 million. And they are all ran by one woman, Nicole. Now, if I could sum up Nicole's career so far, I would say vibey, because her CV is that real hot mix of journalism and social media. She has persistently been in roles that require her to know exactly what's going on at all times when it comes to tech. After graduating from NYU, studying broadcast journalism and politics, she launched into a role at ABC News where she led the live digital talk show Real Live, rising to the ranks of associate producer. Nicole then worked on a major project called the 1619 Project Initiative by the New York Times as an off-platform and worked as an off-platform and user-generated content editor. It didn't stop there. She then became senior social media editor at the Daily Beast, heading up a team of social media editors, establishing the company's Instagram aesthetic, growing their followers into the 100,000s. And after a year there, she moved on to a social strategy manager role at NBCLX, NBC's Universal's newest platform for Gen Z and millennials. Then, the hustle called. It's clear that Nicole's bread and butter is harnessing organic social, branding, and nurturing audiences. And when asked to sum up her career and so far in social, she said creative, data, and results. Welcome, Nicole.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Oh my God, thank you for joining me. I mean, the introduction I did for you laid out exactly why I wanted someone like you on this podcast, because we've not really had anybody who's had that kind of mix of social media and journalism experience so closely. And you can't deny the effect that social media has had on journalism in the past 5 years, with so many different platforms coming up and the way that people decide to get their information, who they decide to trust at the moment with their information. So I'm so excited to talk to you. I'm going to go straight into the first question, though. It's the first question we ask everybody. If someone had asked you about starting a career in social media, what would be the first piece of advice you would give them?
My first piece of advice, if someone were to ask me, would definitely be make sure you are ready to commit to your whole life being on the internet, involving the internet in every way, right? We were kind of talking about this before we started recording, where it's like when you want to unplug, people do those social media cleanses and they're like, I'm going to delete my Instagram, delete my Twitter, and just unplug and get away from the world. We cannot do that. That is our job. Even if we delete our personals, we still have our job accounts in our hands and we have all this access to everything that's going on. We see everything that's going on in the Kardashians' life, everything that's going on in the news. And you have to be ready to understand those social media cleanses can never happen for you. You'll have to always be informed, for better or for worse, about everything that's going on, from the littlest gossip to the biggest news stories. And you have to be mentally ready for that. It can be mentally taxing to have that much information all the time and always being on top of everything, not even in a particular beat, but just across genres. And it can be a lot. And so I would tell anyone, just make sure you are ready for that and that you understand that that is what the job is.
That's brilliant advice. We're going to get on to talking about work-life balance as a social media manager a little bit later. But I want to ask you about, okay, yeah, we're staying on all the time, but there are some days where we can't stay on. And how do we manage that? How do you manage that, especially in journalism? So You arrived at the hustle, you've had a long, illustrious career following the journalism path. So you wanted to be in broadcast journalism. What made you shift into mixing those two together? Because I mean, you can do anything with a broadcast journalism degree. Why go the social media route?
You know, it's very interesting. So I'm not even 30 yet, but when I was in college, social media was not even really a job yet. It was kind of like this thing that people didn't quite understand, but it's kind of been here for a few years. And there would be someone who's an assistant of some sort, and their second job was also doing social. There was no First, there was no formal training for it. You didn't go to school for social media. So, and just like there were no real jobs yet when I first graduated for social media managers or social media editors. It just wasn't taken seriously. So honestly, it wasn't even a thought in my mind to be a social media person while I was in college. I did journalism since I was 14 years old. I was the editor in chief of my 8th grade yearbook. And then then I moved on to yearbook in high school. And so I was just like, journalism's going to be my thing. I tried the writing track and I was like, I cannot stop getting B's in this class. I don't understand it. I'm trying so hard. Maybe writing's just not my thing. I tried broadcast. First time I kind of ventured into the multimedia and broadcast world, I was getting A's. I was seeing, okay, this is going to be what I do. Again, we had Twitter and those things, but it was more of like a journalistic tool. You needed to have a Twitter, you needed to have a Facebook to be able to communicate with sources. But people still weren't thinking about social in that way, or even digital. It was still broadcast and print. And I went to college. I graduated in 2015, and it was still broadcast in print.
I was going to say, you graduated the year before me, and that was the same time that I was having to like think, okay, I want to work in communications, but PR is probably the only bet. And then it sort of like steamrolled into being a social media career.
Exactly, exactly. We were just like a few years before social media really started becoming a thing that people were hiring for. And so when I got to ABC News, what kind of pushed me into the social media realm was the start of live video. You remember when Facebook was paying companies to do live streaming video? And so that kind of stepped me into the door of working within the social world. I didn't really think of Facebook as anything more than just a place to keep up with my aunts and uncles that I don't call, but I stepped into this world where I was doing live streaming on Facebook. I was leading my own talk show, as you mentioned, Real Live, and I was really understanding social. I was communicating in the comments and things like that, tweeting out for my job. Later on, moved on to the Good Morning America kind of revamped their digital presence. So I moved on to Good Morning America Digital. And then I started realizing, all these broadcast skills that I have of learning how to create long packages and videos, I can actually use to make social videos. You remember when social video first came out, it was the text on screen video thing, and that's kind of was the move. I was like, I can do that. I started doing that for Good Morning America Digital. Then I was poached by the New York Times, and what I was doing mostly just on Facebook became a Facebook and Twitter situation where I was doing the live member Periscope and Twitter merged together, and you were doing live video there. From that is when I learned more and more about how social works through the lens of live video. What are people talking about? What are the types of things that people are going to want to see through a live video, which will translate to what they're going to want to see in a tweet and what they're going to want to see in a post in terms of the trending conversations and the trending topics. So that's when I started getting even deeper into that world of social. And again, I want to mention that the job that I got at ABC News and the New York Times, those are not jobs that people would have been thinking about while I was in college, again, when I was not in college that long ago. Live video was not a thing. People weren't thinking about live streaming on Facebook. I had never dreamed of working at the New York Times because I was like, I did not report in Afghanistan, so I don't think there's a place for me there. And then this role became a thing because of the changes in the social space. So from there, I realized that I had a real knack for social in general. So I started working with the New York Times travel section on social, doing working on their Instagram presence, working with special projects, the New York Times special projects, and talking to them and helping them out with some of their other social needs. And then to the 1619 project, where I was working on the social rollout plan with that. And that was an amazing opportunity. I've learned so much over the course of these few years to finally move specifically into the social realm after that 1619 project role. Then that's when I went over to the Daily Beast. So it's kind of like a metamorphosis, picking up a little social as I go along, and then turning that fully into this social world. But it was because also of the growth of social in terms of companies taking it seriously and seeing it as an actual job. And then that's when I was able to get to that point.
This is exactly why we want to do this podcast. It's really completely part of it. It's a bit not archival in a way, because we're talking to different types of people who have started social in so many different ways. The way that somebody would start a career in social today is completely different than the way that we started it. And we really had to roll through the punches. Parallel to you going through journalism, I went through sort of like public sector, government sort of edge into end up like and corporate PR into going into like the social route. So like that same thing of like picking up the skills that really defined what I was doing, which for me was community management. Like community management back in 15, 16 was completely just like block them, delete the post, tell them to go through DMs, and don't make them do anything else. And now it's like, how many times have I heard in the last year, community is the bedrock of social media? I knew that. Yeah, I knew that in 2015. So it's just like, it's so interesting when I'm talking to so many different types of people to see where they end up, that sort of that little niche within social media, how they end up growing that. And for you, it was clearly like live content and video. Now it's turned into, and it's obviously been the best way for you to complement that journalism route, because it's live and it needs to happen and people need to know what's going on right now. So when it comes to you, like you got yourself at the hustle, what is a typical day like for you? Because what the hustle does is has to be on trend with absolutely everything. What are you trying to concentrate on at the moment? How do you manage your typical day there?
So when it comes to the hustle, one of the things that I've found I've been, I guess, trying my best to work on or really hone in on within this role is this business and tech focus that I was not used to in my other roles. So as you've mentioned in my career, you didn't hear Bloomberg or Wall Street Journal or anything on there that would speak to this business and whatever conversation. But what I have found is that rather than trying to just be within this niche world and have our social only speak to this niche world of business, tech, whatever it is, what I try to do in the day-to-day is meld that with trending conversation that's already going on. There is a business, tech, finance angle to everything. So whereas this is a new kind of a little bit of a new world for me, I found that there's a strength in that because I'm seeing things from an outsider perspective now. So I'm like, okay, even down to in the United States, Biden's next Supreme Court pick after the current Supreme Court justice has decided to retire. He needs a new Supreme Court pick. That might sound like it's just a politics situation, but there are definitely going to be business, finance, tech angles within that I can either speak with the editorial team to try to get something going or create something that's social first. As you know, within the social sphere, sometimes we can't always wait on things to be made from the top or whatever it is. We kind of have to create social first content in certain spaces. So with a situation like that, it's okay, maybe we can talk about how much do Supreme Court justices even make? What do they get in funding from others? There's always something there that can take this niche topic of business, finance, technology and make it interesting to the broader public. Because if I were to try to grow a social following only focused on people who are down in the nitty gritty, I've already cut out a whole large section of social followers, potential social followers. So my goal every single day is how can I take this finance or whatever topic and make it appeal to everyone? How can I take this non-finance related topic and make it appeal to finance people or bring that finance business technology angle into it? And that's how I look at everything, every trending topic that I see going on Twitter, every story that we have that I need to promote. And then I'm thinking about when it comes to TikToks and Reels, as we know, that is the way to grow right now on Instagram is Reels, as annoying as can be sometimes because of the creative that goes into it. That is the way to grow. Even when I'm doing that, I'm finding the angles that will appeal to the largest audience rather than just let's talk about crypto. Let me figure out the type of way that I can maybe discuss crypto in a way that's going to appeal to more people, the people that aren't investing, the people who aren't necessarily interested but they want to laugh. Did that answer your question?
It did. Too long, don't read. You do a lot in a day. You do a lot in a day. So it's what I'm just hearing is that you're dedicating them to that, keeping them in the news, but there needs to be an angle pretty much on everything that you can get your hands on, but then also that element of reactivity. Journalism has been taken by that element of reactivity. That's the point of it. But I feel like when I've also been talking to other people, brands trying to hop on to reactivity, they pick and choose what their red lines are when it comes to being reactive on things. Whereas for you, it's like there almost are no red lines. You have to be it's the news. Like your reactivity is like the base of what you're doing. How have you sort of managed the expectations of that? Because obviously you've got the hustle, like wider team, the wider comms team. What is your like relationship with them day to day to try and manage what you want to put out on social?
Well, thankfully, because of the type of environment that HubSpot has and tries to foster within all of its departments, I am the social lead. I do what I want. They trust me to make things that are going to work for the Hustle brand. That is why they hired me. So I don't have to at least seek permission for certain things. When it comes to maybe editorial content that I want to translate onto social, I might suggest something to the editorial team. At the end of the day, it's their decision, but I can say, hey, I see this has been trending on Twitter. I'd love to have a post for it, but I just want to throw it to you all if there's something that you can work on that I can then translate. But for the most part, I do, for better or for worse, kind of operate within my own bubble. So, which is great for creativity. I can do what I want, can do what I need to. But then at times it can become a little bit more difficult when I need to bounce ideas off of people. But I do have free reign to do what I need to do and do what I want to do. HubSpot's pretty great about letting the hustle do what it needs to do. They understand our voice and that it's very different. We're more witty, snarky. You might catch us cuss a few times, which you won't see from HubSpot. So yeah,
that's really great because I was going to touch on like, okay, so the HubSpot have acquired you. What is like the HubSpot like rule of law there to like what they want to do with this? But it's clear that you've got free reign to do what you like, to let the hustle shine. It's the reason why they got it in the first place. Is like they're there to do that. Let them do that, which is good. And then you touched on like the creativity as well. Like there is so much people really underestimate the amount of creativity that this job needs, and how it's like two camps basically, left brain, right brain. You need the creativity for the post to bang, but like you also need that data mine to track how much engagement they're getting, where are the leads, that kind of like data driven sort of thing is really needed. How did you sort of wrestle with that, like trying to like keep those two tracks going in this job?
I would even say there are three tracks, because then you also kind of need that nitpicky managerial mindset to be like, is this going to get us in trouble? You got to think about those sorts of things. Maybe we shouldn't say this. Maybe we should pull back on the language. Maybe we shouldn't post today at all because of whatever. And so there's also that aspect of it. But how do I manage the creative as well as the data? The data informs my creative. So if I post something on Instagram, I've posted this version or genre of post twice, and I see that it tanks, that changes my whole creative now. Okay, so this isn't going to do well. My audience clearly doesn't like this. I should also say, just because the hustle audience doesn't like something doesn't mean that your audience, like the Agorapulse audience, won't like it. It just depends on the people you're speaking to. So if that happens, where something tanks or something does well, that data informs my creative in every way. So it really goes hand in hand. I can't do creative without knowing and seeing what the data looks like, seeing where our numbers are falling, seeing where our impressions are at, and if I need to do more reels because our impressions are behind. Does that mean I need to push out more reels to get us to our impressions goal for the month, or whatever it is? So I really just kind of put them together. When it comes to using that data in reporting, I set aside time once a month. I feel like once a month is the best cadence for me to kind of do my monthly reporting on how things have been going, and I use that to inform the next month. Some people do weekly. Weekly is a lot for one person who's leading everything, and then to have a week or 1 day a week to do all these reporting on the data and the analytics. So for me, I just do it monthly, but it's really hand in hand. I don't separate the two. I don't see a way in which I could be as creative as I am without looking at how things perform, looking at the analytics, seeing what people are talking about. I use like the Google SEO newsletter that they send out daily, because SEO trends tend to mimic social trends, and so I use those analytics and those numbers to tell me, okay, maybe that means if I posted a story on Spotify back when the Joe Rogan controversy was really heated, maybe that'll do well. And then it did. I placed a bet on the analytics, and it worked out. So that is how I balance the two.
How do you measure your success on social media then? If you've got all that in your mind, what is success for you?
So success for me changes depending on the platform and what is normal for that particular social channel for that particular brand. So if I post something, and let's say, for instance, if you're looking at 100, I'm just saying a number, 100 likes is low, and then let's say 500 is high, and it only gets 100 likes, but I'm seeing that it's got 55 comments, this is on Instagram, I'll consider that a win because I've generated conversation. So if I can generate conversation, because all of that is included in impressions and all of that. So if I can generate conversation on Instagram, to me, that's a success. The shares and the saves and all of that are great, but if I can at least generate conversation, I'll consider that post to be a success. When it comes to Twitter is a different story for me. I look at Twitter as straight up engagement rate. For me, an engagement rate of 1 to 3% is solid for any one tweet. Once you start dipping below 1%, that tweet's a dub. But what some people don't think about, because since I work in publishing, what some people don't think about is, like, if you post a tweet and it only has 1 like, some people look at that as a loss. I'm posting link content. So where you see 1 like, I'm looking in the back end and I see 200 link clicks. That is a win. Like, it's hard to get people to click a link on Twitter. So I don't just look at how many retweets and likes, I'm looking in the back end and all that, because it's more than just, I mean, they're all engagement. Clicks are engagement, right? But it's more than just what people can see on the outside. So you might see a hustle tweet and they're like, oh, why'd they post that? They only got 1 retweet and 1 like. I'm seeing the back end and it stayed up because I saw I got hundreds of clicks, even though people might not have retweeted and liked and whatever. But yeah, it all changes depending on the platform. And I don't know if it's like controversial to say this, but I'm like on the fuck Facebook bandwagon. Like, every social media person is pretty much on the same bandwagon when it comes to, like...
Yeah, it's very much like, why do we have this page? No one's looking at it. Why am I doing this? And then this is going to timestamp our podcast, but the Reels announcement this week, I was like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to us? Like, who's going to be looking at Reels over there? No one.
I have tried posting Reels on Facebook. They don't go anywhere. Nothing happens.
Where are they going?
Yeah. No one looks at those, so they don't even make sense. And so companies that are like, you need to focus on Facebook, they make no sense to me. They don't understand that this is not 2012. Facebook is not a traffic driver. People are seeing, I believe it's 14% of their content in their feed actually comes from brands, because Facebook is prioritizing friends and family. So Facebook, when it comes to success and whatever, I'm like, as long as we don't drop 100,000 followers, it's a success. I still post on Facebook, but the effort is not the same as on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, even LinkedIn, because of the fact that Facebook is not as kind to brands as it used to be in the past. It's simply not a great place for branding. Once in a while, as a publisher, you can get a hit on Facebook. You can post something and it can do extremely well, get a couple thousand clicks. So that's why I would never say just stop, but it's hard to game the system. It's hard to understand exactly what's going to do that for you.
I think on reflection, what is really working for Facebook is, like, I think public sector pages. So whether you've got something like a housing association or a public body that requires that level of customer service of people going into your DMs and asking you questions. Universities, for example, they do well on Facebook pages and Facebook groups because they've got so many people asking them different types of questions. They need that. Meme accounts do very well on Facebook for just the pure engagement. But like those typical B2C brands, it's sort of gone. It really has. Like it's fallen out of favor with them.
Yeah, it's really hard to kind of like, I guess, use Facebook in that sense. But as you mentioned, yeah, groups are also definitely a great place on Facebook. If you have a group of people with mutual interests or whatever, that's a great place. I know that they are pushing groups or were at some point pushing groups, but in terms of brands, yeah, it's not the greatest.
So when it comes to anything exciting that you're working on with the Hustler, is there anything that you can give us like a sneak peek of what you're working on?
Oh, so what am I don't really have anything in particular, new projects or anything that's coming up right now, unfortunately. But just in general, as you follow or whoever follows the Hustle social channels, you'll see that I am pushing greater DINB, which is diversity, inclusion, and belonging. So you'll see more of that sort of content that speaks to people of color, more content that speaks to women, just to kind of be a part of where the world is headed, just in being a more inclusive environment. So that's one of my biggest, I guess, focuses right now on all the channels.
Yes, I love that. I think it's been a fine balance trying to do diversity and inclusion on social media in a way that is not hollow or sort of virtue signaling in a way that is useless to people. I think I don't know. I'm seeing, especially in the UK, different approaches and takes and arguments for as to why people want to make their social channels or their content more diverse. And I definitely think, especially working as a woman of color in this industry over years, some of the things I've heard and the pushbacks I've heard on doing certain things and why has been illuminating as well as alienating, because one of the things about being a social media manager is that you are on the front end of everyone's views and opinions of what you're doing, but on the right at the very end of what the company thinks they should be getting out. You're the last one to hear everything, the first one to hear all the feedback about it. Social media, how do you think it impacts businesses, and do you think it's something that people should be taking more seriously for their business?
Oh, yeah, I think at this point in time, no business should be ignoring social media. I think that it just depends on what you're selling and who your audience is as to what platforms you should be on. But at this point, social media is a necessity for every business. In terms of branding, whether or not you have an actual product to sell, you need to be on social. That's how people are going to see you. The younger generations aren't really watching TV with commercials in the same way that people were before. So if you want to catch people, you're going to want to catch them on social. As boomers get older and they eventually die, it's the younger people that you want to catch for your brand, and that's where they're at. Depending on the age, you might need to be on Snapchat. I don't have the hustle yet on Snapchat. We as social media editors know that's a whole team. And so we don't have the bandwidth for that. But if you're really reaching young, you might need to be having Snapchat series or whatever, or definitely on TikTok. At the very least, you should be on Twitter and Instagram. It's very hard for brands to build from the ground up right now, to start a social media channel from scratch. So if you are a brand who is on social, it's important to think about what balance of both paid and organic social am I going to need or reliably going to be able to use to build this brand. Because some brands think that, oh, I'll just post really well and then grow and then that'll be it. And that's not the reality. A lot of social is paid to play right now, and they have to be ready for that.
Exactly. I think when you're building up something from scratch at the moment, there is so much more planning involved. Like just don't open the account and then just hope for the best, start posting something like twice a week. No, 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 no. You have to plan everything, especially if it's something quite new for your business to start. Yeah, they're very used to doing web articles and blogs, but your job as social media manager is like, I can't just post a link in an Instagram caption, can I? So what can we do with this blog to atomize it and make it the thing that leads people back to that blog? Having those conversations in your business takes time, and getting people, so many people in the departments of your business on board with that does take time as well. So yeah, when you're building something from scratch, it's very much you will have a try to plan as much as possible before you launch, and then commit to testing and learning every month about what is actually working for you. If there's nothing showing you growth, which is the startup mindset, cut it off, cut off the fat. That's the kind of thing you end up having to do. So when it comes to, we mentioned this slightly a bit before, the work-life balance of a social media manager, especially for you in the environments that you've been in, how have you managed to maintain a balance? Do you have a balance? Are you happy with it?
I do have a balance, but I would say it's not necessarily because I am one of those people that are like, oh, I am going to make sure I take a break. I know I'm going to relax. Again, they did not pay me to say this, but HubSpot is great in terms of work-life balance. They are very serious about making sure that these people who work so hard can take time off as needed. So there have been times where, and this is something very relatable to many people, and including social media creatives, where I'll just be like, I have creative burnout. I have creator's block. I can't think. I can't be creative. I need to take a day, and then I'll take that day, and I'll mute all my Slack notifications, delete my email app just for the day, and then I can unplug. Unfortunately, I'm still very attached to social, whether it be my own social presence or my jobs, because I am building my own brand as well as my jobs brand. So when I'm not working on my jobs brand, I'm working on my own. And so I don't necessarily have a complete cutoff from social, but in terms of the work related social, I have a very good work life balance. If I need to take a break for an hour, go to the gym, I always go to the gym to kind of have that break in my day. So it's not like all I did today was do social media. I go to Orange Theory. I don't know if you guys have that in Britain. You probably do, right?
What is that?
Orange Theory Fitness.
No, we don't.
Oh, okay. It's like a hit class. It's super intense, and hit is just like exercise in general is really good for the mind and to de-stress. And so I do it because it's a really intense workout program, and then I start work, and it's fabulous if I do say so myself.
Cool. Well, I'm like not in London, so maybe if I was in London at the moment, I would have heard of it. I'm like in the backwater of England, so maybe it's not come yet. It might come here in like 7 to 8 years, knowing the rate of things, the way that things come to where I'm living at the moment. So, work-life balance, try and have time for yourself, basically, and enforce that time as much as you want.
Yes. Yeah, enforce that balance. Yeah, as much as you can. Take time off. If you're not trying to build a personal brand like I am, to delete the social or app or whatever for that day that you're able to be off. That's a really great way to do it. And just try to do the, as they say, the self-care, the unplug, because it can be a lot to stay informed and plugged into everything at every second of the day at all times. So.
What skills do you think are essential for a good social media manager in 2022?
Skills that are essential. You have to have, but like, not quite discernment. Is that the right phrase? I guess discernment in terms of knowing what is the appropriate content to post at a certain time. So being able to discern content, like, yeah, is this the right content? Is this the right tone? Should I be posting right now? That sort of skill. Obviously, there's the creative aspect as well. And then you have to use social in your day to day and understand how social works. And I know that sounds so, well, duh, you're a social media manager, but people don't understand that you have to understand how every platform works, what every platform likes to see, how a caption works on Instagram versus TikTok versus Twitter versus Facebook, links. Like, people don't always think about that, and that's also why I feel as though social media tends to be not given the respect that it deserves sometimes, or social media managers in general don't always get the respect they deserve, because people don't understand just how much thought goes into per platform and per post. And so you definitely have to actually understand the inner workings of each of these platforms, be up to date on their algorithm changes, learn how to work with algorithms. And because you'd just be surprised how many people are like, I want to work in social, but then like, I don't use Twitter, or I want to work in social, but I don't actually really have an Instagram. then you don't want to work in social because you need to understand how these platforms work.
When I'm like trying to like limit my social use, I realize, oh no, I've just like missed on a whole thing. I've missed on a whole thing. Like it's just like I know when I've had periods and I'm just like, I don't want to look. I'm not looking at TikTok for a week, and someone mentions a new meme, like custard meme. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't know that. So yeah, no, you definitely have to like stay plugged on as possible. Um, but also, I would say just like keep your own private profiles, like keep that algorithm clean. Like keep that to the things that you really just want to like see for yourself, just to get some like. 'Cause if I have to see like a carousel post on Instagram about how to like utilize the latest audio trends for reels on my personal, I will lose my shit. Do you know what I mean? Because I can't see it then. I want to see it. I don't want to see it. So I try and keep those algorithms clean as I possibly can. You had like a very long, varied career in social media. There must have been some mistakes along the way. What was the biggest mistake you've made, if you can say it out loud, and how did you fix it?
The biggest mistake I've made in social. Thankfully, I haven't had any sort of crazy like tweet mistakes that went out and got viral or something like that. I'm very I guess an anxious person. So like I think 3, 4, 5 times before I tweet or post anything. So I haven't had any sort of mistakes like that. I'm trying to see if there's anything career like just social career wise mistakes. Um, I don't really have any major mistakes, unfortunately. Well, I guess fortunately, but unfortunately that I can't say anything.
Fortunately for me and this podcast, but fortunately for you, you haven't. And I hope that we've not jinxed it and manifested something that's going to happen tomorrow with the hustle. If I see something go bad, I'm like, oh my God, I did that to Nicole.
Have you heard from other people some major mistakes? I'm like, maybe I need to avoid some things.
So we've had some various mistakes. There are a lot of the mistakes have been like tweeted from the personal account to a brand or something like that, or not quite realized that they've done that. Some have been more on the edge of like, I won't spoil it for some of like the business because will be coming up in the next episode about using the wrong word um, that kicked off news bulletins about the area because they used a certain word that they were on like maneuvers for, or like on their social listening, that word would mean something else. So there was like a local news response for one of the people when they said a tweet about a fire alarm and it turned into something bigger. That was something that I've heard. I've got a good one, but I'm not going to reveal it until like the season finale, because it may have involved a meme and it may have nearly costed someone their job. But we'll go into it as an Easter egg for the season finale. I'm not going to reveal it yet. So, yeah, no, it was bad. It was bad. It was so funny. The whole day itself was so funny. I remember it so clearly. Um, but we can't go into it because we've not got time. But it was fucking hilarious. And the person I accidentally did it to, could not look me in the eye for like 2 days. And I was like, I was just trying to be fun and Gen Z. It didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't work. It did not work. It didn't work. But we're cool now. We're still friends. Um, so how would you summarize your social media career? Social media. How would you summarize your social media journey from where you started to where you are now?
So from where I've started, let me think. I would summarize it as I don't want to quite say something that I fell into, but more of a natural, just a very natural progression from starting as a yearbook nerd and venturing into broadcast journalism. Somehow, all the bricks in the pathway were just laid to get me to where I'm at. And I regret nothing. I'm very happy about this very natural transition. I feel more at home in social media than I ever did in broadcast. So because of this, I'm saying that social media is more natural, it's more raw. People want to see authentic brands, authentic voice. Whereas I felt like in the more strict broadcast world, I had to be more buttoned up, suit and tie. I couldn't have a septum ring. I couldn't have dreadlocks. I couldn't be as dark as I am. Let's be real. You know, I felt like I could not be myself, though I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I just naturally found a place where I can be on a reel with my nails all designed and my nose pierced. Thank you, girl. And my dreadlocks, and just completely being myself and getting great feedback for it. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
Beautiful answer. Love it. Now, this is a more meatier question I think you're going to have a lot to say about. So, our last question. Where do you think the future of social media looks like for your industry?
For the journalism industry.
Yeah, where do you think it's going? Because it's very, I don't know if you know, there's something in the UK, there was an account called Politics for All, and it basically was based on, um, tweeting out sort of breaking news pieces from various articles and broadcast journalism bits, and tweeting it out as up to date breaking news. And I say this as an example because they found out, Vice did a investigation into who ran the account, and when they exposed the guy, it was a guy who got famous from being on Glastonbury, being on stage on Glastonbury. He turned out to be like a political nerd and started this account. And what had started to happen is that journalists were basically DMing him to get pushing their articles as a scoop on his Twitter channel, when really what he was doing was just like what was the best way to say it? Like scouring long form journalism articles, investigative pieces, and tweeting out bits and pieces of it throughout the day, rather than actually linking to the article. And then journalists were cottoning onto that and pushing and pushing and pushing for their articles to be pushed on that. And that wasn't an official news source at all. It was just one guy doing a tweet called Politics for All and giving those sorts of updates. That would have been totally unheard of in the past, like what, even 3 years ago, that a citizen would take into their own hands national news like that and have such a following. And I bring this up as a long-winded example. But what do you think, based on the kinds of things that are happening, where is it all going to go from now?
To reference college again, as sounding like someone who peaked in college and never got past it or something, but to reference college again, when I was in school, remember when it was like the blogs are taking over journalism, bloggers are journalists now. And to a certain extent, yes, the shade room is sharing news. Sometimes I see it there before I see it from the New York Times. And it's for better or for worse, because we saw Hollywood Unlocked accidentally said the Queen died yesterday, and then that was a big thing.
Jason Lee, mate. Oh my God. That tweet was like, my sources are correct. Like, did you see where it came from? Apparently it was at the UK editor of Vogue. It was his wedding, and it was the lead singer from the Queens of the Stone Age who had died, and a couple of people were crying about that at his wedding, and that was
Like, honestly, first of all, yeah, I was like, we are not listening to Jason Lee about what happens with the Queen. But okay. But I say that to say that, yes, the blogs and are breaking news in certain senses. TMZ breaks news all the time when it comes to at least celebrity deaths. And so we already see that even the blogs have transitioned to social media. And so when it comes to journalism is, from my opinion, going to transfer more so into social media entities. They'll probably always have the TV versions, because all the TV news places are doing their streaming now. New York Times is focusing more so on digital than they ever have in the past. And there will be people who will still want to watch TV for their news, that are going to be wanting to watch or read digital articles. But if you even look at New York Times, and I keep saying New York Times because I've worked there, but this is for all publications. If you look at even their Instagram captions, they're getting longer and longer. They're giving more and more information. They don't even expect people to click links in bios at this point anymore to go and read more of a story. We're getting so much more of our journalistic information on social, which unfortunately has led to issues like fake news that Facebook had to combat back with the 2016 United States presidential election, because people are literally getting their news online. It's going to become harder and harder to differentiate real from fake. The social media outlets that didn't plan to be these arbiters of free speech are going to have to be trying to play cleanup, as they have been. Twitter has their news tab and all that to try to keep real news at the forefront. Facebook, I think, is probably why they've deprioritized brands, because of the issues that they've been having with real versus fake news. But we're going to see more and more people just getting their information from social, whatever that new social platform is going to be. That's where people are going to get it from. Even TikTok, people are getting their news in 7 seconds on TikTok. So it's just, social media is just going to be more and more important for the journalism industry.
Controversial. Do you think these platforms actually do have the will to deplatform fake news and disinformation? Because half of me sort of thinks, I mean, I think we're on the social media side, cynical brain that all engagement is good engagement, right? Do you think that there's something they are doing meaningful steps to, or do you think they will just pay lip service to countering disinformation?
Well, I think that would be a matter of each individual platform. We saw Twitter went as far as to deplatform the former president Donald Trump to combat misinformation. So it really depends on what each platform is doing. But then we've also seen from the Facebook whistleblower who spoke a few months ago that some of the changes that Facebook was making to combat fake news, or the warnings that they were received were ignored, or the changes that they were making weren't working, or they weren't putting in enough effort. Don't quote me on that. Y'all go do your research. I just know it was something along those lines. I can't say specifics, but I know it was something along those lines. But it's going to be something, I guess, per platform in terms of, are they really taking it seriously? I think from what I've seen, it seems like Twitter takes it pretty seriously. I'm part of the Twitter Black Voices community, so I'm part of different meetings that Twitter has on a regular basis to talk about the things that they're rolling out. I think just by the fact that they have news partners specifically on Twitter that work with individual publications to make sure that real news is shared. So when there is a big story like Ukraine, they're looking to these reputable news outlets to cultivate their moments for people to find reputable news. Those little "this is disinformation" tags that they place now on tweets, to me those things seem to be very effective. I think Facebook is doing similarly, like Jason Lee's post on Instagram was censored as fake news. I don't see that nearly enough though. I don't know if that means that I just don't have a lot of fake news in my Instagram feed or even the Hustles feed. I don't see it, but I don't see those pop up nearly enough to flag misinformation or clarification and all of that. But maybe they are, and I just haven't seen it. And then TikTok is very strict as well. I don't know if you guys, do you use TikTok yet?
We're not using it yet. I mean, obviously I've got my personal one. I was on it since like for like 2 years now. But like, yeah, we've not quite yet. This is the sort of thing with the space that we're in, is that we're a SaaS company that is trying to build that sort of authorial tone whilst also giving the most basic things that people need from a social media management tool, but going that bit beyond. So it's a very I know that some HubSpot do that well. I watched like their Instagram is brilliant. Like I do try and take a lot of inspiration from HubSpot Instagram, I'm not gonna lie. But it's sort of pushing that thing because it's gonna get edited out anyway. But like I'm sort of the UK team, but we don't have a global social media manager. Like we don't have one. So it's sort of like we have social media managers in regions, but we're all sort of like flying blind. So the thing at the moment is like it's more, I was expecting to go to this job and it'd be like vibey, and I could be more vibey than I could be like be fun. But it's been like having to build things from scratch, like social media strategies from scratch. That has taken out that time where I could have been doing the sort of fun social media campaigns that I really want to like upskill in. So it's really, I'm really trying to balance that at the moment, like trying to get like, this is what a carousel needs to look like. This is what a Reels cover needs to look like. Those are the conversations we're having as a social media manager about establishing that. So when you're on that back foot, it's like, so it's, I'm hoping we can become at that point where we can push out and pull out that kind of fun video content and have the time. I would love to be doing it. I just don't have the bloody time. Do you know what I mean? I don't have the time. Like I'm basically a one-man band at this point. I have no assistants. We rely on VAs and freelancers to do certain things.
Yeah, definitely. And TikTok is a full-time job. That's why the Washington Post had one person doing TikTok. It's a lot.
We're going to do our quick fire round, and I'm going to think of 5 questions very quickly to ask you. Okay, number 1, what was the first social media site you ever signed up to?
Facebook. Actually, no. MySpace was one of the first.
What is the one social media site you would get rid of with a click of your fingers?
Facebook. Sorry, you gotta go.
Okay, if you weren't running the Hustles brand account, which brand would you really want to run?
Strong black lead from Netflix. Hands down, I would love to run that brand account. I don't know if you follow them, but I love them so much.
Will you ever join the metaverse?
The metaverse is terrifying to me. The whole concept of it, I just feel like it's just our introduction to the simulation theory. And I try to, as you said earlier, stave off some of your existential crisis. So I'm trying to just stay in the reality as much as I can.
Have you actually started Wordle yet?
I have. I've done a few games. I want to say I've probably done 3 to 5.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us on the Confessions of a Social Media podcast. Where can people find you?
So you can find me at NCOL Phillip on Twitter and Instagram, and you can also find me on TikTok.